Hey guys, TC here. Hold on. You know what's coming. You know, I'm giving you time to get ready. Ready? All right, here we go. Salud. That one's for you, Alex. Look, another friend of mine had sent me a video on this other expert on YouTube and social media in general. And this is the same faggot that Sage used to quote to me, as if this guy's opinions were supposed to be some kind of authority. I don't know. It was supposed to mean something when it really is just another opinion piece. That'd be like somebody quoting me for my opinion, saying I'm an authority figure. I'm not. This is just my opinions. Now, I ground a lot of my opinions in logic and reason and the facts as I see them and that I currently have at hand, right? I can't say I know everything. I know every aspect of every angle of every situation. That's just not that's not reality. That's not reality. But what I am pretty good at is taking the information that I have and extrapolating that data into a coherent and reasonable opinion. Now, this guy that I'm talking about is Mr. Global. And he recently came out with a video like, do you miss the person you were before Trump? And he goes off with this diatribe about, he had his toddler. He's never known nothing but hate because he was a toddler when Trump was around and blah, 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 blah. I mean, look, you whinging progressives out there, I can't even say liberals, you progressives, you enormous shitbags, have this coming to you. We on the right have tried working with, reasoning with, speaking with, debating with, trying to express our opinions to, hey, you're going too far. You're pushing us too much. There will be backlash. We warned and we warned and we warned, and now Daddy's got his belt off and things are ratcheted up a notch. You don't always get your way. We don't always get our way. That's for damn sure. We're just now starting to get our way. You guys can't handle it. How do you think we felt for the last 20 damn years? We've had enough. When I mean we, I'm specifically talking about the American workers. We've had enough. We need a return to normalcy, and normalcy is prior to NAFTA, how our American way of life was, where you can have a good middle-class job without having to have a need to go out and get a super high degree of education in gender studies or underwater basket weaving just to show you have something on your resume so you can qualify for an entry-level job making $15 an hour. That's not the way life is. Now, maybe it's because I'm turning into, an old fart, but that's not the way life used to be. It's just like trucking, right? Obviously, I'm in a truck right now. Adjusted for inflation back in the 70s, the average pay for a truck driver back then was $120,000 a year. Now, that was when I looked into that statistic, that was prior to Bidenomics and his 30 to 40% inflation. So take that with a grain of salt. During Trump's first administration, that's when I looked that up, and it was $120,000. What it is now, I don't know. I haven't adjusted that figure for inflation. Probably 140. Anywho, the issue is we had some weak men on the right, and we either had progressive or progressive light. That was the whole thing about between the back in the 90s, it was the big joke. There was no difference between a liberal or a neocon. And there really weren't. I mean, except for one had an R and the other had a D next to their name. If you look at the policies between, say, George W. Bush or Hillary Clinton back in the early aughts, there really were no policy differences. George Bush was for war, Hillary was for war. The Bushes were for taxes, the liberals were for taxes. Everything else that differentiated between the two parties was just a facade. It was just like one like pearl white while the other one like off-white. You know, it just one likes beige, the other one likes tan on the walls. You know, it was superficial on the differences. Now the line of demarcation between the two parties is a lot more stark, and that's because of how far the progressives have tried to push us as American citizens, and we've had enough. And the only reason why it's looking so dire for them is because we are returning to normalcy. And the fact remains, it wouldn't have to be this bad if the progressives had just followed the law that we are all supposed to be following and adhering to begin with. Biden nor his administration had the authority to allow 20 million people to do a conga line over the border into the interior of the country in 4 short years. He did not have that authority. He broke the law. As a matter of fact, if I were the one in charge, I would have him brought up for treason and dereliction of duty, along with his administration, his cabinet. I would have his cabinet members up there too, and we would be having our own version of Nuremberg trials right now. That's just me, because the damage they have done to this country just from those 4 short years is immeasurable. We already had an overabundance of illegal immigrants in this country that we were dealing with. We were dealing with a housing crisis that we never really fully recovered from 2008. You know, our children were already suffering. The reason our demographics are plummeting in this country is because the progressives and some rhinos had made it so hard for the next generation to basically get off the launching pad to start their lives. That includes the opportunity to get a decent job so they can buy the home, so they can attract a mate, so they can settle down and have kids, right? So they've made it too difficult. You got 35-year-olds still living at home with mom and dad because it's too much to live on your own. So these people are treating it like a math problem. Instead of attacking the real issues with our economy, and that's why we're having a demographics collapse, is that they're trying to plug it with third worlders, warm bodies just from wherever, and they were just treating you like a dispensable cog in the machine that anybody is plug and play as long as they got a warm body to throw in there, so those eventually start paying in the system, which doesn't actually happen, because once the illegals come in and start having kids, yeah, the illegals will work hard, but the children don't, because the children become Americanized and they run into the same buzzsaw that native American citizens run into. They run into the same damn problem. So it's a never-ending flood of people from incompatible cultures flowing into the interior of our country to help stymie the loss that they created, and they being the progressives. You know, the uniparty is a real thing. You have the rhinos out there that are addicted to cheap labor. They're addicted to serf labor, basically. I can't say quite slave, even though it's damn close. But it's at a minimum, serf labor. These are a secondary class of people that are paid under the table, that have no recourse, no voice in our system or with their jobs. And if they don't like the situation that they're being abused and exploited at, they are threatened with violence or being sent back home. And that's no way to live. And we fought almost to the last man in the 1860s, at least the South did, to correct that we don't have a second-class situation here in the United States. And the progressives are using the same exact arguments that the plantation owners were using at the time. And I find that very ironic. After all, if you free all the slaves, who will pick the cotton? That's what they said. And I swear to God, I heard the same arguments coming out of progressives. Well, if you send back all the illegals, who's gonna pick the fields? Who's gonna pick the crops? You know, and I maintain this, that if you're a business owner and you can't get right by the law, if you can't do business lawfully in the United States, you have no reason to be in business. I don't shed a tear for you. If you're a rancher or a farmer or a convenience store owner or a factory or whatever, chicken plant, I don't care. If your business cannot survive without exploiting illegal labor, then you have no business being in business. As a matter of fact, your business should be confiscated and you should be doing hard time right now. Mandatory sentencing. No probation. You're exploiting people around the world. You're making a second-class. You're exacerbating the problem. You are the milk. You are the dish of milk on the front porch, attracting all the strays in your community to come take a lick of. You are the problem. You are the economic incentive for these people to show up here when they shouldn't be showing up here, unless they're doing so lawfully. And we, the people, through our representatives in our government, designate who we want, who we don't. If you have a particular set of skills and we are lacking those, then yeah, we'll open it up to H-1Bs or whatever classification that we have at the time. I know there's several. What you don't get to do is decide for yourself, waltz across the border, plop a squat, and then just say you're not leaving. That's not going to happen. That's not being tolerated any longer. As the sanctuary cities are finding out. Those days are over. You will get right by the law, whether you like it or not. And that's all there is to it. You can call me a bootlicker or what you want. I don't care. Because in the end, whereas I can sympathize with the people when they come over here and make a better life for themselves, but not at the expense of the American workers. And you can look at many industries, many good paying industries, or they used to be good paying, that are suffering. Construction is one. Construction used to be a good, middle class, noble career. It's a hard career, but it is a skilled trade that they have absolutely bottomed out the economy in and the wages. You know, they shouldn't be that way. Now they're coming after trucking. So when I see a lot of the people squawking out there about the English language requirement, and they've been here 20 damn years and they still don't know a lick of English, well, you got no one but yourself to blame. I'm sorry. You have sequestered yourself into your foreign national enclave. You never bothered to integrate with society. You never bothered to learn the language, even though it was always a requirement to have your CDL, which, by the way, it started with Obama relaxing those rules, which he did illegally. He didn't have the authority to do that. He didn't have the authority to do that. That's something that Congress set up. You are supposed to have a proficiency in the English language to be able to communicate reading and writing effectively with a law enforcement officer. That was always a requirement. You got to be able to read the damn signs. and follow directions. Not saying that you got to be some kind of savant out here or an English major, but you got to be able to speak and understand the language and be able to communicate clearly. That has always been the case. But again, they are trying to treat our industry like some of these other lower middle class jobs that they're trying to take away from us. You know, and let's be frank about it. Not all of us can be doctors, lawyers, and engineers. Right? There has to be something for us that did not pursue a higher education for us to be able to afford and support our families with. You can't take everything away. You take everything away, and it was bad enough when NAFTA was implemented, when the Rust Belt became the Rust Belt, because they gutted our factories and our manufacturing base and shipped it overseas just to sell us back our own products we were already making here. And then you wonder why, you can't fill a pothole or bridges are collapsing all across the United States and the infrastructure is just deteriorating. It's because you allowed the businesses, the anchor businesses in those communities, to flee to pay slave wages and not follow good environmental practices. And they're finding out that, all that pollution in China, it's landing on the West Coast because all that shit gets up in the airstream and it lands on the West Coast and abroad. And so, what happens over there does affect us over here. So if you're an environmentalist, you should be applauding Trump's push to bring manufacturing back to the United States, because we don't want to chew our air over here. We follow good environmental practices. You should want that. And we have fair wage laws. We have labor laws over here. They don't. They barely have they don't even have human right laws over there. We have a good rule of law. For all the flaws that we have in our system, it's still much better than the majority of the planet. Because at least here you have a recourse without being thrown away into a gulag somewhere because you dared to raise your voice to the factory owner or the politico and the apparatchiks. And that's what we're doing right now as a working class people. We are expressing our voice and our opinions to our politicians. We have changed out enough rhinos in our Congress and our representatives to make them populists. And it's making a difference. And now we're starting to see action. And it's good. And you're going to hear a lot of squawking. You're going to see a lot of crying and gnashing of teeth and people pitching a fit because they've had it too good for too long for flaunting our system. But working class people such as myself have had enough. We've had enough. We're tired of the business owners taking advantage and exploiting labor and undermining our wages and our way of life. That, I'm sorry, but they got to go. They got to go. And it's not a hate issue. I'm not out there hating any one culture or people or race. If you're not supposed to be here, you're not supposed to be here. I've seen people from Mexico, Cuba, Haiti. I've seen Germans, and I've seen other Europeans. They're all being yeeted. They're getting yeeted out of the country. You're not supposed to be here. A lot of them are overstaying visas, and now they're causing problems. Just like that one guy that recently went off on a college campus. Right? He was here on a work visa. It expired. And he never left. Well, and then he caused problems and started wound up killing people on campus. It happens. And any one of those crimes, since it's preventable because they're not supposed to be here, is a tragedy. It's a tragedy. Never should have happened. So do I like the person I was prior to Trump? Did I like my country prior to Trump? I like it more now because we're actually following the rule of law. I like it now because we're actually doing something about a problem and we're going to fix it. And we're, once we fix the bleeding, right? It's like a triage situation, right? You stop the bleeding before you can address everything else. You stop the bleeding, and then you can address the other issues going on with the body, and the body being our country. Fact remains, you're not a replaceable cog in a machine that could just be plugged in with by some random third worlder from around the country. Where you come from matters. Your culture matters. How you grew up matters. Throwing you away or not allowing you to have children, raising up as Americans, and being replaced by somebody that has no cultural ties to the people, to the land, to anything here other than a paycheck, is not the same thing. And that's already been proven out by the Prime Minister of England, or the UK, I should say, Keir Starmer. And he came out within the last couple of months saying that, we tried open-ended immigration, even though that was the entire point of Brexit, by the way. That was about maintaining their sovereignty. And turns out the Tories weren't any good. They didn't do shit about it. And Labour kind of doubled down. But even he as a Labour Prime Minister, came out and said that unending immigration was a failure because the bean counters were wrong. They took the human element out of the math. And it turns out that the migrants are actually costing more money than they're worth. So having that warm body half-ass paying in the system, even though they're paying under the table, doesn't make up for all the social services they take advantage of. And that's one of the reasons why Trump is attacking birthright citizenship, because it was never clearly interpreted correctly. Just because you come over here, both of you are foreign nationals, and you plop a kid within our borders does not make that kid American. It was never intended that way. Never, ever intended that way. And that's being corrected. That's being corrected. It is what it is. You don't have to like it, but this is the way we're going. And it's not hate. It's not hate. It's actually following the laws as they should have been followed from the very beginning. And when we finally get there, we are all collectively going to be better off than we were prior to these actions having to be taken. And they have to be taken. In order to save this country, we are not citizens of the world. We are citizens of these United States. You are not citizens of the planet. We have clearly defined borders. If you want to be a citizen of the planet, then you should be promoting American imperialism and hegemony and empire. Right? If you want to be a citizen of the planet, that means the United States has to turn in all the risk cards and just take over the planet and put everyone under our rule of law. Now, if you want to have that conversation, we can have that conversation. I'd be down to talk about that. But until that happens, we have borders. Clearly defined. And we will enforce them. As we will enforce the rules of law within those borders and jurisdictions. As it should have been all along. But again, it's the progressives, the Marxists, that are the damn problem. That's what I got to say for now. TC out.